It's a very significant G20 summit for India, as Indonesia will be handing over the presidency to us from the 1st of December. It will be India that will be presiding over the G20, the grouping of 20 of the most powerful economies in the world. The Prime Minister is expected to unveil the theme and present India's view on primary issues of the day, the food and energy crisis, climate change, and much, much more. Amitabh Kant also can be seen there, and Ajit Doval as well. So these are visuals from Bali in Indonesia. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, as you can see there, with External Affairs Minister S. Jaishankar. The G20 summit this year is the 17th such summit and is expected to focus on the major crisis that the world is faced with today, the food and energy crisis, the food and energy security to be of prime importance. Prime Minister Narendra Modi arrived there in Bali yesterday. President Joe Biden also to be attending, as well as Prime Minister of the UK, Rishi Sunak, expected to attend. And the Prime Minister also met with members of the Indian diaspora. Earlier we had shown you those visuals of the warm welcome he received on his arrival. He is set to meet several leaders at the meet here. And Samiksha joining us with more inputs on this. Samiksha, it's the first day of the G20 summit today. Leaders from the 20 most powerful nations gathering here at the beautiful island of Bali in Indonesia. Give us a sense of how the day is likely to pan out, particularly for India, considering how important this summit is, as India will now be handed over the presidency from the 1st of December.
Well, absolutely, Rukma. So to begin with, the visuals there on our screens of Prime Minister Modi with the MES Jaishankar there, an action-packed day, because we understand that Prime Minister Modi will have 20 engagements in the 45-hour stay in Bali. So this is going to be very action-packed, given the scenario across the globe. One, of course, being the rising inflation, the record inflation that we are, seeing across the globe. Not just, it's not just India or limited to some countries. We have the global superpower US, which is also facing a record inflation. So that is going to be a primary area of concern. The bilaterals that will be held, in which key agreements could be inked. The summit, of course, comes amid the global recession fears, the nuke threat, as well as the global food and energy crisis. Because remember, the world is still reeling from that post-pandemic era. There are still a lot of headwinds that the countries are really battling with. Also important to note here that it was the first in-person meet between Xi and Biden, which happened yesterday. The first in-person meet between Biden and Xi to have happened since Biden took over the oath as the US president. So that was also one highlight of the G20 summit. For India, of course, the main issues are going to be the G20 presidency mantle. As India is going to steer the G20 agenda for 2023, India will also be raising the issue of renewable energy, digital evolution, among others. So the key three sessions that Prime Minister will be attending will be focused around these areas. One, of course, as I mentioned, renewable energy. Two, the digital evolution. And three, of course, Prime Minister will steer the G20 agenda for 2023 as India is all set to take over the G20 presidency mantle. Another thing to watch out for would be the bilateral that will be held between Prime Minister Modi and UK Prime Minister Rishi Sunak. So that is also something very interesting to watch out for. And just a recap as to the summit that comes really in the backdrop of the concerns revolving around inflation. One, as I mentioned, global recession fears, the nuke threat by South Korea and Russia, the global food and energy crisis, among others. Also remember the geopolitical tensions remain there at large because the conflict between Russia and Ukraine continues for over a year now. So that is also one area of concern. Supply chain disruptions is also something that all the countries are battling with. So yes, these are some of the areas of concern, and the three key sessions will primarily revolve around these. Sukma.
Right, Samiksha. Interestingly, wholesale price inflation as well as retail price inflation in India, at least, they are showing a decline. And the news is that, so that's incredibly good news. Meanwhile,
Mr. John, stand here. Don't stay here.
Langkah pupuk akan menyebabkan gagal panen di berbagai belahan dunia. 48 negara berkembang dengan tingkat kerawanan pangan tertinggi akan menghadapi kondisi yang sangat serius.
Speaking at the G20 summit, and as Samiksha was just detailing the agenda for India, at least as India is to take over the presidency from the 1st of December, 20 engagements. And during this period, Prime Minister Narendra Modi is also expected to visit a mangrove forest. The disappearance of mangroves, a major concern as part of the climate change conversation. As we were telling you, the Prime Minister will have around 20 engagements in his nearly 45-hour stay in Bali. He's expected to hold bilateral meetings with around 10 world leaders and also attend a community event to connect with the Indian diaspora. Earlier, we had seen the warm welcome that the Prime Minister was accorded. Official sources say that it will be a hectic and productive visit to Bali. And the Prime Minister, it is expected, will also take advantage of this opportunity in order to welcome world leaders to the 2023 G20 summit that will be held in India. Meanwhile, significant among the bilaterals was the special meet that we had seen between President Joe Biden and Chinese President Xi Jinping. It was a nearly 3.5-hour long discussion, and we'll of course be bringing you more details about that as the day goes on. But Xi Jinping clearly expressing his wish for closer cooperation with President Joe Biden of the United States. Remember, this G20 summit is taking place amid incredible global tensions. Earlier, President Joko Widodo of Indonesia, in various press briefings, had said how crucial this meet is. And although he had made it clear that it is not a political forum, but a summit to work for the growth of the and revival of the economy and the growth of member nations and various regions of the world.